Welcome, everybody. I'm Tiffany from Class Act Match Consulting, and I'm really excited today to talk with Al, who matched into orthopedic surgery during the 2025-2026 match cycle. Welcome, Al. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I would love to start off by learning about your background and what everything looked like coming into the match this last year.
Yeah, so definitely was a bit nervous going into the match. I non-traditional applicant, took some time off between college and going back to medical school. I had a career in tech for a while, and then was a DO student at ASCOM. Um, didn't have too much research, pretty hard. So I'm sure other fellow DO students know to get research in some subspecialty specific areas. So I really spent a lot of time trying to maximize the academic side of my application. I had a pretty good step two score. Um, but yeah, bit of a non-traditional applicant and came from kind of behind the research ball, but was fortunate to match.
So, going into the application process and starting to just discover ERIS and letters of recommendation and all the different moving pieces, what was the biggest fear you had as far as completing your application?
I would say just coming with not much research. I know there was a research section, and I was nervous mostly to see how blank it might appear, and just feel that I was missing a huge part of my application. I knew the rest of it would be sort of tedious, and that was intimidating in its own right. But coming in with something that I felt was lacking, was a concern for me.
Okay, and what about the opposite end of the spectrum? What was easier or maybe just more pleasant overall than you thought it would be?
Um, it was nice just having being a non-traditional applicant, having some life experience, putting in the section where you can put various life experiences, most meaningful things. I thought it was nice to put in my prior job or volunteering things not related to medicine. I think that set me apart, and it also was a nice reminder that I had done other interesting stuff and that I wasn't just a hole in the research department. There was other interesting things about me. So that was kind of a nice reminder that it is holistic, I think.
Can you talk a little bit more about those kind of outside of medicine entries on your CV? That's a question that a lot of people have is if there's any value in including things either before medical school or things completely irrelevant to medicine. But in your case, like you said, that actually gave more context to who you were as an applicant.
Yeah, I think I've heard it depends what you're applying to. Surgical specialties, which obviously was my goal. Um, I wasn't so much worried about volunteering in medical school. I had done that beforehand. I think if you have done enough to get into medical school, that's fine. So I was really just trying to build a story that I had been in a real work environment before, and I was not going to be a liability from that regard. So for me, I tried to focus on all the variety of work experiences I had beforehand, whether that working through college and then also having a full-time job for a year and a half. Um, that I think was important. It depends on the route you or how you want to pose your application. So coming from a non-traditional applicant and again lacking research, I thought that it would be a benefit to focus on what I perceived as my strength is that I had that work experience. So I really wanted to build on that aspect, and I think we were able to do that with your help and just make it look like, I was coming in and I was ready to start working, which is a something residencies are looking for. They obviously want someone who on paper is good from the med school metrics, but they need someone who can also work and function as part of a team. So that's kind of the route that we took.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that there's tremendous value in really highlighting outside of medicine professional work experience
Mm.
because so many applicants are really coming straight from an academic path. So there's a little bit of a gap, if you would, in terms of professionalism. And it was really great, like I said, I think to highlight that for your application. And would you mind too talking a little bit about your hobbies? Because your hobbies were really interesting and unique
Yeah,
and also relevant to your field. So I think it would be great to share that too.
yeah, that is true. I like working with my hands. I make kitchen knives. And so for my surgical choice of residency, that was helpful. We tried to emphasize that, I had experience working with my hands, and I do. I only had one interview where this was a part of the interview, but I've heard other students having it where there was an actual, physical skills section. I had to like drill a hole through a pipe at some angle. And it was nice because they had read my application. They actually gave me a sort of an extra challenge where instead of drilling it straight through, I had to go at an oblique angle. Um, so I guess I set myself up for a more difficult task in the interview, but they clearly had read it and it was something that was important to them. And I do think it helped matching, just really emphasizing that it's kind of the same thing. In addition to showing up in a professional capacity and being ready to work, I also have sort of a baseline prerequisite of manual skills, which obviously are not exactly the same as surgical skills, but it's kind of like I'll show up ready with that. And I think that was something that was good to emphasize and was part of my success in matching.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing so much about your hobbies. Let's move forward a little bit and talk about application day. What kind of emotions were you experiencing once everything was said and done, applications were out, and the waiting game began?
It was sort of, I was in the middle of a very busy sub internship. So I'm not sure I had a typical experience. I was just working a huge amount. It felt like a relief, but almost like I had no time to even focus on it. It was very nice just having worked with you to have so much done in advance, and it really was filling out stuff rather than scrambling at the last minute and trying to get stuff together. So I think that also probably it was a relief, but it was smoother than I thought. And then when it was done, it kind of was like, oh, okay, that's okay. I can chill out a little bit. And I think that was really because I was busy, but mostly because working with you, we had done so much in the months leading up to that. It was just filling in some annoying forms. It was not the last minute scramble. Um, and that was very nice.
Awesome. So y- orthopedic surgery has a universal release date, and you had to wait all the way through November, which I know a lot of people in other specialties actually would probably appreciate knowing that there would be nothing throughout the end of September and through October. But do you feel from your perspective, was it easier or harder kind of knowing that you had to wait all the way up until the universal release date?
Wa- Waiting was easier. What I did not realize is that not everyone adheres to the universal date. So you will certainly not get things early, but you might not get them on that day. And so I did not did not have a great response on the day. Uh, and that was very stressful because I was under the assumption that all programs adhere to it. And I basically was like, well, there goes my chance of matching. So that was not very fun. But more came in throughout the months and it ended up being a good interview season for me. But that is something, if you are applying orthopedics, to be aware of that not all the programs, and that depends on what programs you apply to. Some are very strict with that and others are not. But um, don't be so down on yourself if it doesn't quite go the way you expect, because there may be programs who are lagging behind a little bit and it'll all come out better. But I was a little nervous after after the first day.
Can you share some of the specifics as far as like number of interviews on the first day and then anything you did after that first day to try to encourage additional interview invites?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I got yeah, after the first day, and a bunch of rejections, but mostly silence. I mean, the majority, I would say, of my signals list was silent. And so after a day or so, it just gave it a little bit of time just to see if there were any immediately lagging behind, and then I started sending out letters of interest again. To the programs that I was interested in, and also this was slightly more strategic. Some of the people I had signaled that I felt were more, or programs I had signaled that I felt were a little more reach. I put those a bit on the back burner and focused on the ones that I thought were more achievable for sending letters. I think I ended up sending letters to everyone that I had not heard from. Which I don't know exactly how many that was, but yeah, I think that was important. I don't know if it was the difference between getting an interview or not, but it certainly didn't hurt. And then I ended up getting 8 total, which I think for this year was a pretty decent number.
Yeah, so 8 interviews total
Hmm.
going into rank order list. What was that experience like for you? Was it really tough for you to arrange those programs, or did you have a pretty clear idea?
I had a pretty clear idea. My number one choice was one of the few that actually adhered. It came in the first day, which was nice. Yeah, I had a geographic location that I was interested in. My partner also was applying to grad schools in the area. And my first choice was the only place that worked for both of us to be in the same city. So that was an easy one. And then there were a couple more that were in the area. Yeah, really it was based off of, I would say mostly my partner's preferences. Through interviewing, I really liked everyone. I think the application that I submitted attracted a certain type of program. So I didn't feel that there was any one that I would really be disappointed at. So I think I could have been happy anywhere. So aside from the first couple, where it would have been best for both my partner and myself, then we just sort of went where we'd be interested in living, and that was nice. There was none that I felt like I would be devastated at, which I think was a nice position to be in because it took some of the pressure off. If I fell to my eighth ranked one, it wouldn't have been catastrophic. So that was a nice position to be in.
And going into match day with 8 programs on your rank list, what were you expecting? I guess what I mean to ask is, were you prepared for bad news? Or were you trying to remain neutral, or were you thinking completely positively?
Was trying, given my history, non-traditional applicant, I had to apply to med school twice. I was very used to, I felt like I'd received many rejection emails in my life. I felt internally, sort of in my deepest part of me, I felt that I had a pretty good chance of matching, but I did not want to go into the day expecting anything. So I sort of hid that deep down, and I was prepared to receive a rejection email, even if I didn't feel that that was the way I wanted to. That's what I wanted my expectation to be. Um, but I was able to sort of, I didn't really get worried until the night before. I don't know. I was busy with rotations, everything was happening. I didn't dwell on it too much, but the night before I was nervous, but I tried to mentally prepare myself for a rejection just because I would rather be happily surprised or, oh, I thought I was going to be rejected rather than I'm really expecting to match and be devastated. So I tried to sort of curate and set myself up for an easier time if I did not match.
So then what was it like that morning, finding out the good news? And then also, what was it like later that week when you found out where on your list you matched?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I had a top choice, but other than that, there was really not too much difference in my rank list. So for me, Monday was really the big day. That was just like, if I match anywhere, I'll be happy. And then there's, a little happy or a little slightly less happy, but it wasn't a big deal. And so I was just very happy. It was such a relief to say you're not eligible for soap, which is funny how they phrase it as if it's a bad thing. You're not eligible. I don't want to be eligible for soap. So that was a huge relief. And then I didn't really get nervous until right before opening the envelope. My partner had just been accepted to a grad school program in the city of my first choice. So that was when it kind of became more real. That was the only time I felt nervous, where I said there was clearly one choice that would have worked better for us. Um, and yeah, so I got a little nervous and then, but very just right before, and then luckily it worked out perfectly. But yeah, I think my emotions were very delayed. I wasn't nervous until the night before opening the envelope. And yeah, I don't know. I put my head in the sand. It was stressful, followed by big relief.
And so you did match at your number one rank
Hmm.
in the end. Yeah,
Yeah,
excellent.
which was great.
So one thing, if I can circle back, that I didn't ask about yet was interview season.
Hmm.
How did that go in terms of, was it as you expected, especially being a non-traditional applicant who'd been through corporate America type of interviewing, or was it different than what you thought it was going to be?
It was it went well. I think it depends on what your application looks like. I had basically all community programs, and maybe that just attracts a certain type of people. I felt like my interviews were all pretty similar. They were pretty low key, um, and yeah, not very formal, which was nice. It really felt like they were just trying to get to know you. For the places that I had rotated, it was good to see them again. It was just a very casual conversation. The places I had not done sub-Is at, they were just kind of trying to get to know you, it felt like, which was really nice. I felt like you had crossed the bar of they accepted that you on paper were good enough, and then they just wanted to see if you were, would get along. So that was nice. It was, I would say, probably less intense than I had heard and was expecting. Um, so it was nice. Yeah, a lot of them felt very casual. It was nice to have a mix of online and virtual. It allowed me, I had 3 interviews over 2 days. One of them was virtual, so that was nice because otherwise I would have just lost out on the interview opportunity. I ended up going to every place physically doing second looks, which I think was valuable. I asked, some of them offered, some of them I asked to. Um, I didn't match it. I matched my first choice where I had already been and done a sub-I, but I think it's worth it if you have never rotated there just to express extra interest. One of them outright told me that since since I hadn't been there, if I wanted to and was able to, if I could visit the program, it would increase my match stock. So I figured what the heck. But yeah, it was good. It was much more casual than I thought, and everyone was pleasant. It was kind of worse than I had imagined, or worse in my head. I had imagined worse, and it turned out to be pretty low key and nice.
So you gave some good advice in there in terms of going into interviews with the expectation that it will be pleasant and kind and people just want to get to know you. It's not as high pressure as a lot of people expect. Besides that, is there any additional advice that you can think of to share with applicants at large, and or specifically with those who are interested in orthopedic surgery?
Yeah, I think everything's sort of been said. The one thing that I think it's easy to fall into a trap of is trying to, especially when you're doing sub internships, which seemingly now in almost every specialty are extremely important with signals and stuff. It really is important to choose where you're going to go carefully. But everyone's going to tell you you want to do a good job and you want to impress people, but I think that you should not try to be someone that you are not, just to impress people, right? You're trying to match at a residency. They're trying to suss you out as a person. And if you're putting something that's not you forward and they like it, maybe that's not a good match for you. I don't think you should try and hide who you are. Obviously, you want to work hard, you want to be good, but I think it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to curate your personality exactly what they think they want. And I just think that does a disservice to you. Um, you should just act how you are, and you're not going to get along with everyone. And you should obviously be professional if you happen to encounter someone you don't get along with, but you're going to spend a lot of time there, and you should be yourself because that's how you're going to present. And if they don't like it, then that's a place you shouldn't match. And I just think it would be unfortunate if you had tried to make yourself act in a way to appease people and you got into a place that you just didn't jive with. I remember, it is a part of matching, but you also need to be in a place that's good for you, or else it's going to be miserable. So just be true to yourself, I think is important because it can be easy to get wrapped up in purely trying to please people and sort of losing yourself in the process.
I think that's such excellent advice that actually applies across the entire process. So whether it's writing your personal statement or, actually engaging in interviews, the mind frame of what do they want to hear or how can I package myself in a way that can help me reach this goal is not the right mindset. The right mindset is to be who you are. And of course, like you said, we want to do everything we can to elevate that and uplift it, but always staying
Hmm.
true to your values and your goals, I think
Hmm.
is an important message for everybody to know going into this upcoming match. So I want to thank you for spending some time with me today and sharing your story and also giving some advice and guidance to upcoming applicants. And on behalf of Class Act, I wish you all the best in your orthopedic surgery first year.
Thank you. I do not think I could have done it without your guys' assistance. So thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome and take care.
Bye. Take care.